It's great to be back together. I missed out getting to be here last Sunday, and it's funny how no matter where we are, on Sunday morning around 9:30 or 11 o'clock, I start thinking about what's going on here at Seymour First. And last Sunday we had the opportunity to visit a church that I'd always wanted to attend, but had never had a chance. We were in Chicago. We'd actually been up in Wisconsin on Saturday for a district event, and we were coming back home on Sunday, and we stopped in at Willow Creek Church, the Willow Creek Community Church by South Barrington, Illinois, I think, outside of Chicago there. And Bill Hybels is the pastor. And we really enjoyed that, but we knew we were missing out on a great day here. I had heard, they had been in on the planning, hearing some of the things that were going to come, and the service called a door that you had last week. If you missed that service, you can get online and check it out on the Facebook page or on our website at SeymourFirst.com. But it never ceases to amaze me how just a testimony on a piece of cardboard can be so powerful. You know, sometimes we think we got to tell this great big lengthy story, and really it was just 15 or 20 testimonies on a piece of cardboard, and they would flip it over. It was kind of the before and after, and it was amazing. I mean, it brought tears to my eyes. I couldn't wait to see it, and when I got to watch that service and watch that portion of the service at least, it was very moving. Probably some of you are thinking, wouldn't it be great if he'd do the message on a cardboard, flip it over, hey, God bless you, have a good day. We're not doing that, but it is amazing how much can be communicated on that little piece of cardboard. But we loved seeing that, and sitting in church last Sunday up at Willow Creek, I was just thinking, among thousands of worshipers, I love the church. I've given my life to the church, and I love the church. I love the church as a whole, but I thought about it even more specific than that. I don't just love the church. I love my church, this church, the church that I attend, the church that I serve. Now, when I say my church, I always cringe if I hear somebody else say it, and I cringe even when I say it, because somebody will say, well, I've been attending your church, and I always like to say, I don't have a church. I pastor a church, I serve a church. That's God's church. It's not Steve's church, so I want to make that clear right off the bat, but I just definitely want to say that I love my church, and that was evident again in my own heart and mind this past week. And when I say that, I love the church I attend. I love the church that's made up of the people that I love. I love the church that God's called me to serve. And I hope that a large percentage of you would be able to say the same thing. I love my church. And, if you're visiting with us today and this isn't the church that you attend, maybe you're from out of town or out of state, I hope you can say, I love my church back home, wherever that might be for you. There are all kinds of reasons to love a church, to love your church. I would say, is just right off the top of my head, some of the things that stand out. I love a church that's involved in doing what we're doing for children. I want the kids from the nursery all the way up to have a positive experience with God and church, and obviously they connect their experiences here with their relationship with God, so we want that to be good. I love a church that has a desire to impact junior and senior high students. I love a church that has exuberant, vibrant, exciting, engaging worship. I love to be a part of a church that has practical and relevant teaching that is down to earth and can impact the way that we live today. I love a church that's got a heart to impact the world for Jesus Christ. You could fill in the blank. I don't know what you might put in there. I love the church because, but what you might say. And I thought about leaving it there, but this weekend I decided, you know what, I don't want to leave it there. I want to hear from you. So here's what we're going to do. Just this morning, just as the first service started, I posted on Facebook, here's why I love my church, and then said, please comment. And I was hoping that some people would get on there and post, and I intentionally have not looked at that and don't intend to, and I don't want you getting on there and reading it during church. Now, if you want to get on there and post something during church, this is one Sunday I'm going to say just do it, because I'm afraid you'll forget if you wait till you get home. But if you're on Facebook and you haven't liked the Seymour First Nazarene page, do that and comment about why I love my church. And if you don't have Facebook, I would encourage you to go on email. And I haven't told Renee this yet, but office at SeymourFirst.com. You can email her, and I'm going to ask her to take all those comments with their names and post those on the page. And then if you can't do that, you say, I don't have email, then you can call the church at 812-522-2060 and just leave a voicemail or tell John or Renee, here's why I love my church. They'll write that down, put your name on it, they'll post it. Or you can, write it down yourself and bring it in and hand it to us. Or if you think you can't do that, go back to the Welcome Center, and I've given Sharon some postcards like this. You can take it, and as long as you get it in the mail by Monday afternoon, we'll have it Tuesday. That would be a way to do it. Or you can, just find another way. Send it by carrier pigeon. I don't even care. But what I want to do is I want to get all of those different responses, why I love my church, and I want to have Renee print those out, and we'll post them for Wednesday night, just this week. We'll post them in the office area there in the glass, and we'll post them somewhere over in the family center for those of you that aren't online so that everybody can see, because it's a testimony. I love my church. If you love your church, I want to hear from you. Now, I know this is risky. This could really be embarrassing, because if nobody writes anything, that would be discouraging. Or if it's only my wife and I. I love my church, and we're the only two that say. So if you have any heart at all and you love your church, now I don't want you to do it if you don't love the church, but if you do, we want to hear from you in one of those ways that I just mentioned. And I think it would be wonderful to hear from dozens, but I think it really ought to be 200 or 300 at least that would say, I love my church, and talk about why that is. And who knows, maybe the Lord will use your testimony to inspire others. And just like we saw last week with the cardboard testimonies, it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It could be a sentence or a statement. I've actually run onto people through the years that have told me some very interesting things about why they love the church. I've had ladies make the comment that, I love my church because my husband's coming now, and this is the first time in our married life that my husband's ever come with me to church. And I say, praise the Lord for that. That's good stuff. I've had people say, doesn't sound very spiritual, but I just love it that we get out on time. That's a reason. I know some people that love it because of the time. I was talking to somebody the other day, they just had their second child, and they'd been coming to the 9:30 service. They're thanking God that we've got an 11 o'clock now, that they've got a new baby in the house. And so there's all kinds of possibilities. Like me, last week, I loved the fact that I could get online and watch and still be kind of a part, even though I wasn't able to be here that week. I think there are people that say you love the church because you have a place to serve. There really is a place for everybody. Some would say I love the church because I love the people. You made some great friends around here. And that's a wonderful thing. Now, if you haven't done that yet, I would tell you that this church is large enough that if you want to, you can be anonymous. But I hope you don't want to. We want you to be a part, and so I would encourage you to engage and get to know people and get plugged in and be a part of what's going on around here. Now, let me tell you quickly, this is not some narcissistic exercise. When I say I'm asking you to post or send a comment or call it in or whatever, this is truly a testimony. It's your opportunity to say, here's why I love my church. And, maybe you haven't come right out and said it yet, but you're beginning to realize you really do love your church, and it's time for you to go on record. I hope you take that invitation seriously. And, that's kind of the message before the message to say, hey, do you love your church? If so, Facebook, email, telephone us, postcard it, write a note, do something. But I hope you'll let us know where you stand as a form of testimony. Now, as we get into the message, this is going to be very unusual because it's unlike any message that I've ever done before. I'm going to ask you a question, and I really want you to consider it from the bottom of your heart. If you do love your church, do you have a plan to financially support the church that you love? Now, if you don't love the church, this isn't for you at all. This message would apply if you love your church, even if it doesn't happen to be your church. As I said, maybe you live in another city, and what I'm going to talk about this morning has specific application for you wherever you live. But it's not specific here. But if you live in the area and you're here visiting for the first time today, this is kind of like a first date, and I get it. And we love for you to come. We want you to fall in love, and we're going to invite you to fall in love. But, I don't suggest you fall in love on a first date, even with the church. So if you just started coming, it's a little too early for you to be in love. We understand that. On the other hand, if you're still in the dating phase and you've been coming here for a year or two and you haven't said yet, I love my church, you haven't really committed, perhaps you have commitment issues, and maybe we need to talk. Maybe we need to pray together to encourage you to say, hey, I'm in. I really do love the church here. And so the question, what do you do? What's the plan to financially support the church that you love? Now, I'm not talking about dropping in a couple of bucks here and there. I'm not talking about supporting a project here and there, even though, you may do both of those things. I'm talking about what kind of plan. Do you have a plan to support the church you love? Now, let's talk a little bit about motivation. I am convinced that the motivating factor for all of us when it comes to supporting the church is love. And there are three levels or three elements that I want to focus on. One is our love for God. I believe that when we love the church, when we love God, that's a primary motivator for giving. And our giving is a tangible expression of our love for God. I put Him first because of my love for Him. I give Him the first day of the week, the first few minutes of the day, the first of my financial increase as an expression of love. The second motivation to give is my love for the church, and I know I'm speaking to a number of people who love God and love the church, its mission and its ministries, and so I think it's a legitimate question for you to consider, at least this morning. What's my plan? Now, some of you would say, I don't have a plan. You don't have a plan if you're not, plugged into being a percentage giver. You don't have a plan if you, haven't set an amount, or maybe if you haven't gone online to set up your giving. Now, we don't do online giving per se anymore because of the cost, but still several will support through their online banking. That's what Lori and I do. And I got to be honest, every week when the offering comes by, I want to turn around and say to the ushers, I gave online, we've got it set up that way, but they've gotten to the point they won't even come up and stand beside me anymore. They just start on row 2, and so I don't even get to tell them. They were sick of my excuses, I guess. But, maybe you don't go to the ATM, you don't have cash, you don't bring a checkbook, you don't have a plan. You love the church, and maybe you give once in a while, but you just haven't set anything up. And if you haven't, you're not alone. The average person who attends church in the U.S., doesn't give a lot of consideration to how much, they support the church that they love. As a matter of fact, I've read research again and again and again that would back up the fact that 70 to 80% of regular church attenders or members do not support their churches financially on a regular basis. That's true across the board. It's been that way for years and years and years. And here's what's so amazing about that, in my opinion. If you look around, not only here, but around the world, around the country, it's amazing to me what 20 to 30% are able to get accomplished. It's a remarkable thing. And yet, should we settle for that? Should we encourage others to get involved? I think that we should. And so I want to give you, the basic reasons people don't have a plan. Reasons somebody would say, I love my church. I'm glad my church is in the community. I believe the church needs this kind of, the community needs this kind of church, but I don't have a plan. There's probably 2 or 3 reasons why. One is, I just have never thought about it before. Some of you would say that, and for you, we're done, because now you're going to think about it, and that's all that I'm asking. Some who have never thought about having a plan, when the offering plate comes by, you just react in the moment. And so what happens is, here comes the offering, and you reach in your billfold or your purse or wallet or whatever you call it, and you start to look, and you notice, there's no ones or there's no fives. Now what am I going to do? Or maybe tens. And I thought about taking a poll here this morning. There might be some of you would say, hey, when I see that all I've got is maybe a 20 or a 50 or 100, you've thought about making change out of the offering plate. You have. I mean, we've all thought of it. I'm not even going to ask you to raise your hand. I do think I'd like to have those of you raise your hand that have actually made change out of the offering plate. Would you raise your hands? Find out who actually went through with it. But some of you just haven't thought about it. Second group is you just haven't taken the time to create a plan. You hear a message like this and you're thinking, you know what, it's right, I do need to get a plan, but I don't have one now. And I'll tell you what, we're in another phase of our Financial Peace University, and I so much appreciate Jeff and Michelle Ellis who facilitate this for us. This week I've been hearing testimonies from folks that have said, hey, I paid off the car, hey, we've paid off the school bill, got the debt snowball rolling. That's the only snowball I want to hear about these days, isn't it for you? But got the debt snowball rolling, building up our emergency fund, all good stuff. We love to hear that. But, we teach in that class that you need a savings plan, and you need a spending plan, and you need a giving plan. Those three are all legitimate things to have as a part of our planning when it comes to our finances. And without a plan, here's what's going to happen. You're going to save too little, you're going to spend too much, and you're only going to give the leftovers. If you don't have a plan in the area of saving and spending and giving, you're going to save too little, you're going to spend too much, and you're going to give only the leftovers, which, if we're honest, a lot of the time is going to be nothing. So a good strategy, a really good strategy for managing our money, and it's so simple, you could write it on a 3x5 card, is give first, save second, live on what's left. That would fit for anybody. Give first, save second, live on what's left. One more thing, why we don't have a plan is that we don't think the church needs the money. I've run onto this with people. It's easy to feel like there's no need for money because here's what happens. You see the financial report in the worship folder week after week, and it just feels like things keep moving, so it's easy to disregard. You come to a service like this, and we do it week in and week out. We receive an offering, but we don't say a whole lot about it, and so it's easy to assume the church doesn't need my money. And then everything seems to be working out pretty well, and you see the lights and you see the sound system, and you realize that, it's warm in the, winter and it's cool in the summer, and that all seems to be going well, and there's a lot of ministry taking place, so it's easy to think, you know what, the church doesn't need my money. Well, I've got a confession. I'm going to come clean here before God and everybody. Here's my confession. I have often wondered what would happen if the other 70 to 80% of the people with no plan would come up with a plan of giving to support the church that they love. How would that change things? I mean, it's amazing to look around and see what 20 or 30% can do, but what if everybody got on board? What if even half got on board with supporting the church they love with a plan? I mean, how would that change things? I've got to be honest, I've wondered that. I've also wondered, what would happen if everybody that says they love the church showed up some Sunday. This is just a pastoral ponderings, I think about these things. I've laid awake on Saturday night thinking, man, what if everybody comes tomorrow? And about that time I'll get a text message. Hey, you're not going to be there tomorrow. Okay, good. We're never going to make it. We're never going to get 100%. And I get it. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive for it. And my hope is that one day we'll see that happen. I want to give you a little history about our church. And some of this is new to a lot of you, but some of you it'll be review. This church, this particular congregation here, was organized in 1900. Right here in the city of Seymour, and they started in a home, and then the small group began worshiping together in an abandoned saloon on South Vine Street here in Seymour. Growth would soon require that the church would move into the former United Methodist Church on Ewing Street, and by 1905, 5 years into our organization, the small congregation built a new concrete block building at the corner of northwest corner of Indianapolis Avenue and 3rd Street. A lot of you know where that is. On July 6, 1921, the church was destroyed by a terrible fire, and then it was rebuilt at the same location. I couldn't find a picture of the church that was built in 1905, the concrete block building, but this stucco building was built there in 1921 to replace the one that was burned down. I don't know if you can see it from back there, but the church sign says, "It's cool inside, air conditioned." I thought that was kind of interesting. Back in 1921, that was the thing. And, anybody remember thinking back, if the church was organized in 1900, does anybody remember what happened about 30 years after the church was organized? The Great, not Gadsby, the Great Depression, exactly. The Great Depression took place, and somehow the church kept the lights on, paid a pastor, preserved their building, and continued reaching out in the community. By about 1950, here's what the church looked like. I think this picture was taken in 1950, and of course, lots of children and teenagers, and maybe you or somebody you love, or some of your family or friends are in that picture from 1950, 64 years ago. That's in front of the second building there at the location of Indianapolis Avenue and 3rd Street. The church then went on to build a larger Bedford stone building there at that same location. This building still stands down there, northwest corner, and that is where the Apostolic Pentecostal Tabernacle now meets. They've expanded, of course, and built on, but that was the church, that was the location where this church met before we moved out here. And I would say that it was around this time and through the 50s that the church really began to start to have a major impact for the cause of Christ. And as I've studied this and looked into some of the history, I have to tell you, I am so thankful for our church. I'm thankful for a tiny group of people who had a vision that they would start a church that would preach the gospel and call people to holy living 114 years ago. I'm thankful for them. I'm thankful for a vision that could not be derailed by a catastrophic fire in 1921. I'm thankful that there was a vision that was greater than the Great Depression. I'm thankful for a vision that caused a group of folks to move out to a cornfield or a pasture out here on the east side of Seymour 45 years ago. And here's the new building right after they'd moved out. And again, I'd say there's probably some of you we could go through, and I'll bet you we could find some of the Burbank bunch in there, and I'll bet you that we could go through a whole list of people, I'll bet, that are in that picture. You might see yourself up there, who knows. But I'm thankful that the group made the move to come out here to this location. I'm thankful for a group of people who held steady when they built this actual building. They held steady when the builder went bankrupt. And a significant part of this building had to be paid for twice, because when the builder went bankrupt, he had materials that had not been paid for, and he had subcontractors that he had not paid, and so much of that had to be paid for a second time. But the church did what the church had to do to be able to navigate through some of those things. And as I look back, I see how God's hand has been on the church, His church, for more than 100 years. I'm thankful for a place where the Bible has been taught to children, youth, and adults, and where the gospel's been proclaimed, and people have come to Christ, and where people have been called into ministry. I was shocked at the number of people that have been called into the ministry here. I was pastoring over in Illinois before we moved to Seymour, and I was pastoring alongside of a senior minister there on that district who was pastoring at Anna. His name was Ralph Hill. Ralph was a part of this church. His family was here growing up, and I was pastoring alongside him before his retirement over in Anna, Illinois. I met a pastor by the name of Jim Hudson who was pastoring in Florida when I met him, and he came up to Seymour and retired, and now in his semi-retirement, I guess, he's pastoring again up in Edinburgh, Indiana. Some of you know Michael and Rachel McCarty. They were a part of this church family before God called them to the mission field. They've since returned and are now pastoring up in Michigan, but they were called out of this church. John and Beth Perkinson were a part of the church family before they went off and pastored for many years in the Methodist Church, and they recently retired from up by Plymouth, Indiana, and have retired back in this area and have been back attending with us. There's guys like Bill Claycamp, who pastored in Freetown, and Ronnie Clark, who went on to pastor for a number of years. Gerald Green, who pastored here, had 2 sons, and actually had more than that went into the ministry, but we believe 2 of them were called into the ministry right here. Sam Green is now the director of the National Praise and Worship Institute at Trevecca Nazarene University down in Nashville, Tennessee. His brother Tim is the professor of Old Testament theology and literature at Trevecca Nazarene University. Donnell Spurgeon was playing the keyboard this morning. Her brother is an associate pastor at the First Church of the Nazarene in Columbus, Indiana today, and has been there for several years. Our own Joel Burbrink leading worship this morning. born and raised and called into the ministry right here at Seymour First. Some of you remember Garrett Mills, and he was a pastor here, and he has two sons in the ministry. We believe at least one of them, David, was called in the ministry, maybe Dwayne, and he's pastoring. Dwayne's in Turkey Creek, Kentucky, and David is in a church plant over in Covington. Eric Salo is the Connections pastor, son of Stephen, Becky Sanders. He's the Connections pastor at Catalina North Church in Tucson. Rick Wilson's the pastor at the Alley here in Seymour. He got his call to preach here. Jimmy Blackburn, he's pastoring out at the Acme Baptist Church. He was a part of the church when I came here back in 2002. Sitting up here on row 2, Steve Barrett, our congregational care pastor, he showed up here as a layperson and felt God's call on his life, and he went through the course of study right here in the church through the district and was ordained just this past year and is serving as congregational care. I love the story of Billy and Dana Snowden. Their 4 children, they were attending every Sunday, and Billy and Dana felt God putting it on their heart that a church was needed and a ministry was needed that would connect with folks in Austin, Indiana. And so they started a ministry called Hope to Others. And God's using them to impact that little community for the cause of Christ. Becky Sanders, our next gen director, she is a part of this church and born and raised here, and God put it on her heart a couple of years ago, and she's providing wonderful leadership to our children's department. Jeff Achenbach, he's a youth pastor over in Hamilton, Ohio. Mark Carter, son of Lowell and Brenda, has been on staff at Point Loma Nazarene University for many years and involved in counseling ministry, and our own son. Lori and I have a son named Travis. He's a youth pastor down in Orlando, Florida. He got his call while he was a part of Seymour First Nazarene. You know, we could go on and on and on. I'm sure this list is not inclusive. That's just some, and it doesn't even include all the people that are married to ministers and missionaries and people that are impacting the world for Christ through secular employment, which we wouldn't even know where to begin to try to measure the impact they've had. I'm just thankful for a church that has been seeing young people called into the ministry, seeing young people called into secular employment, but going to live as a Christian in this secular world. Only eternity could reveal the ways that God has used this church to influence our world for the cause of Christ. We will not know here on planet Earth, I don't believe. I'm thankful. I'm thankful more recently for a group of leaders who had a vision for a different kind of church to reach out to some that maybe others might not reach. You know what all this means is that generations gave to make it possible for us to be here today. Generations have given and prayed and sacrificed and served and done so much to make it possible that we could be here. And I'm just thankful for every one of them. As the pastor here, I'm thankful. And so the question I have is, why in the world would anyone not want to support the church they love? I mean, I don't have any verses. This is, as I said, this is unusual. This is different than any message I've ever preached. I don't have any verses today, and the reason is I could give you a bunch of verses, and I could say, hey, God said, and Jesus said, and Paul said, and all these things, and you might feel manipulated, and you could even resent it if you were honest. But today, I don't want to do any of that. I'm just asking you to give consideration to what I think is a practical, common sense appeal. To just say, do we really need a verse to say, yeah, I should support the church that I love? I mean, the Word of God certainly speaks to the matter. We all know that. But can we just be thankful and do in our hearts what we know we need to do? That's my appeal to you this morning. And so here's the deal. If only 20 or 30% continue to have a plan and nobody else decides to sit down and come up with a plan of how you're going to support the church financially, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to still keep just doing the best I can to preach a practical, relevant message that connects to people where they live. I believe that we're going to continue to provide effective, energetic, exciting worship that's going to try to help people connect to the heart of God, and we're going to continue doing the best we can to create an extraordinary children's environment and provide programming so that our children will grow up with a positive attitude toward the church and that they'll fall in love with Jesus when they're so young, so that the anchor of the faith is set very deeply within their hearts. We're going to keep doing that no matter what. We're going to continue searching for the absolute best student minister that we can find so that he or she can come and also develop environments and provide instruction that will engage the hearts of teenagers in a culture, ladies and gentlemen, that is committed to squashing God and all that is holy out of their hearts. Even if only 20 or 30% continue to have a plan, we're going to continue to do all that we can to make sure that this campus always looks great and that you never have to apologize when you bring a family member or friend. And I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you, Havis Turner. Thank you, Steve Fishburne. Thank you to a bunch of volunteers that give and work and do so much. Thank you. You wouldn't believe how much there is to do around here, and especially Havis and Steve, but a lot of volunteers make it happen every week. And sometimes it's late on Saturday night, and you would be shocked if you saw the calendar. Sometimes, I can't even get a schedule to get a place here in this building or over in the Family Center because it's all booked up. There's people using it all the time. Even if 20 or 30% continue to give, we're going to continue to minister to the needs of every person who considers this their church home, regardless of their giving. That has never been, nor will it ever be, any basis for our ministry here. I had a great call this week. Every once in a while we'll get a call and they'll say somebody's in the hospital and they've asked for a visit. And basically they've registered that this is their church home. And it was a name I didn't recognize, so I went down to the hospital and I met a lady that I think she was 87. She's getting ready to turn 88 years old. And she told me she was born here, she was raised here, she was saved here, she was baptized here, she was married here. She's always lived here. Her kids were born here. Her kids were dedicated here. And she said, I've been away from the church for a while. My husband died, and, I've been sick and just a lot of things. But she said, I just wanted to reconnect, and I apologized. I said, I am so sorry that we haven't been there to minister. And she said, hey, it's not your fault. I've just been gone, but I wanted to reconnect. And so I was talking to Steve so that we can reconnect the dots with this lady. And I just was thinking, man, 88 years. That's where she's been a part of what's going on here, but she's kind of been gone for a while, but now we've reconnected with her, and I thank God for that. And we're going to keep doing everything we can to keep extending the ministries of the church in every way that we possibly can. Do you realize that Seymour First has a radio program that has been on the air on Sunday mornings at 8:30 in the morning for 50 years plus? We don't even know for sure how long, but we know it's been over 50 years. Even if only 20 or 30% continue to have a plan, we're going to keep giving out free CDs and free DVDs to anybody that wants them and asks for them. We're going to continue to post our worship music and messages online, knowing that we are sowing a seed and that we believe one of these days that seed will produce harvest. Every once in a while, I'll hear from somebody from around the country and even around the world. Somebody from the Philippines jumps online, hears something, and then writes a letter to say, hey, your ministry has made a difference in my life. I thank God for Dustin Lafferty. He's our cyber ministry director. Some of you don't even know what that means, but cyber ministry, we've got a presence online that is making a difference, and it is shaping and changing the way the world looks. And just this week I was talking to Dustin about it, and he said that in the last 12 months we have had 25,000 page views here on our website, 5,600 unique visits, 2,900 unique users, and half of those were landing on the website for the very first time. So we're going to continue to do those kinds of things. We're going to keep sharing the message of the gospel through the newspaper and online and in any way, shape, or form that we can. We're going to keep promoting missions and supporting missionaries and sending missions teams. I'm looking forward to hearing what God's going to do in the lives of our teens as they go to Belize this summer. And even if nobody else signs on for more than, just the 20, 30% that say, I've got a plan. We're going to keep doing everything we can to impact our community for the cause of Christ, because we really do believe greater things are yet to be done in this city. Greater things are yet to be done in this community and in our mission field, our mission territory. And I celebrate just this week hearing a testimony of someone that has made a profession of faith this very week. You may not see that or hear that right up front all the time, but the angels in heaven join us in rejoicing when one sinner repents. And so I thank God for that. And I would tell you from a personal standpoint, no matter what happens, Lori and I have committed that we're going to, join the other 20 to 30% and hopefully more, who will always give a minimum of 10% of our increase to the local church that we love. And part of that, I admit it, it's because that's the way we were raised. We do it, though, because we have a plan, and we have a plan because we love God, and we love the church, and we're in love with what this church is doing and what we are called to serve and be here in this community. Because here's what we believe. We believe that the church is the hope of the world. We really do believe that Jesus Christ left us with a mission. Here's the challenge. Here's what we're to go do. We believe that the church carries with it the message that revolutionizes lives. We believe it's got the answer to the question that the world's asking. And we believe the church is the presence of Jesus Christ here on planet Earth. See, you'll miss money that you misspend, and people miss money that they gamble away or lose or waste, but you will never miss the money that you invest in a local church that is in tune with the mission and the will of God. And when you give to a place like that, I am convinced that it is a gift that keeps giving and giving and giving, generation after generation after generation. And the proper motivation for giving is love. It's love for God and people, but there's another motivation that I didn't mention, and with this we're through. That motivation is my love for those we hope to reach. Those that we hope to reach. Many of them we haven't even met. Some of them we think probably haven't even been born yet. As long as the Lord tarries, that number is going to increase, and it could be your sons or daughters or grandkids or great-grandchildren. Who knows? But my prayer is that you'll develop some kind of strategy for how you're going to express your love. And I don't care what it looks like, and I'm not even going to ask you. I mean, it's up to you. There's nothing to sign, no card to fill out. I'm just extending an invitation to you to think about it. What is my plan to financially support the church that I love? See, we can continue to, believe that a handful of people started something that has been going and going and going. We're a part of keeping that dream and that vision alive. Our goal is to spread the message of hope that is found in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I tell you, there's so many exciting things on the horizon. I'd love to get into that, but you're going to hear more about it in the weeks ahead. I believe 2014 will be a year that literally will transform the church and position us to tremendously impact our area for the cause of Christ on a greater level in the next few years than we have in the past. And I want to be a part of that, and I want to invite you to be a part of that as well. Give it some thought. What is your plan to support the church that you love? And then would you take a minute, not about the finances, but tell us, why do I love my church? Tell us on Facebook, on email, on a phone call, on a postcard. Stop by the Welcome Center before you go today. Let us hear from you, because I think this is a great way for us to celebrate the great things that God is doing among us and to be thankful. Would you bow with me, please, as we pray? Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for those that have gone before, generations and generations of people. I want to thank you, Lord, this morning for every pastor, every staff member, every leader, every Sunday school teacher, every van driver or bus driver or children's worker or youth worker, everybody that's helped make a difference by rocking a baby in the nursery, every person that's served in any capacity. I just thank you for those who have given to sacrificially to make it happen, those who have prayed and those who have invested in so many ways for over a century that we could be here today. And going forward, Father, I just pray that you'd open our eyes and open our hearts and open our hands to be a part of what you're doing in our church and in our community and in our world. Our love for you and our love for this church and our love for those around us, those you've called us to reach, that's what motivates us. And I pray your best blessings on each of us as we seek to allow your Spirit to apply this message to our hearts and lives. We want our light to shine brightly in the days ahead. We pray it would be so in Jesus' name. Amen.